Okay, I think it basically comes from a stance. We are not judging the people who are atheists or believers. You ask them the larger questions about, does God exist? Do you believe in this particular faith or religion? They actually don't have an answer. First two films, which we worked just as passionately on as Vikram Veda or this or our Hindi film, it was received very well by a very small group of audience, while the larger group of audience may.
Koimoi.com.
For that, tell me, you're dealing with faith, devotion, and all of those things. We know how fragile that topic is, that discussion is, right? How do you make sure you don't offend people? How do you make sure you don't go the wrong way?
Okay, I think it basically comes from a stance. We are not judging the people who are atheists or believers.
Yes.
I think both those people have an equal and balanced voice, which we need to hear. And the same is for anybody in the spectrum. Though we talk in dualities, right? Like in most of our scripts, there has always been a duality which will establish the conflict. And the duality will be seemingly like on opposite sides of the spectrum, but they are not. They will keep switching the sides of the spectrum. So at any given point of time, who you think is good could be bad, and who you think is bad could be good, given the circumstance of that moment. And good and bad itself is actually a very extreme definition.
Yes.
By that way, we are saying we understand what you're saying. We understand what your system is, what your faith is. And we are not commenting on whether that is right or wrong. We are just seeing how your point of view of the world affects the story. And every point of view affects the story in some way or the other. That's why crime also makes a lot of sense. Because
I think, to answer your question, our intent is at least not to, take a side and like hurt the other side. So our intent is actually very clear in our heads. I mean, as people, we can kind of see, okay, this is where they come from. So that doesn't make them, less better or worse. So I think our intent is kind of fairly straightforward. So, but we like to play around with different points of view. I mean, a lot of Suzhal is about perspectives. And whose perspective you're looking at, and at what point of time you're looking at. So I think those things help us navigate, not hurting people.
Actually, but that question came to me from a scene in the episode Immersion, when Kathir does that. He is at the lakefront and he just bows down to the deity who's supposed to be immersed. By that point, you think he's also atheist, but he's not. And that's just a fraction of seconds, like 1 or 2, right? And that's the scene that made me ask that question.
So actually, Kadir Sakrai's character at different points in the script will have a bunch of it. So the reason why he has a beard on, the explanation is that there's something called Kapakatar, which basically means during the duration of the festival, you don't shave and you use that as a form of piety. That is there right in the first episode.
Beginning, yes, it is.
Then in his when he's walking with his fiancée through the festival, so she will ask him a question and he will give a particular answer about it, which will push him towards that center. But Sakra loves the festival. So in that whole scene, in that immersion scene, you will see him actually enjoying that process as such. And this is exactly the way most people are. You ask them the larger questions about, does God exist? Do you believe in this particular faith or religion? They actually don't have an answer. But do you want to go back to your hometown for your local deities festival? Everybody is rushing back at that time of the year. I mean, we've known people from who have settled in the US and UK make their 5-year once trip, and that will be during the festival of their local town. So because that is also a big community thing. It is less about the actual faith. It is more about the human bonding. So those are the vagaries of life, which I think we all know, but sometimes we just don't take it as being truthful.
It's very surprising, to find the myth behind this festival. I mean, we had to do a lot of research, and we had gone for the festival, we did some video research and all, and small little one hillock is populated with some lakhs and lakhs of people.
Oh my God.
But the surprising part is the myth actually very few people know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they.
Actually,
I mean,
That's
only,
common everywhere. Yes.
So most people didn't know why that whole festival was happening, and we spoke to so many of them at the festival. A few of them had clear reasons, and they could say why this was happening and all that. And that also changes in every town, every village. They'll have their own story for it. But by and large,
habits stay, but when the story actually gets kind of
it gets muddled over the years and all that. So that was fascinating. I mean, you have such a big crowd and in fervor. This is one of those, not those quiet festivals. This is there's music and dance and drama in the festival. And most people didn't know why the festival is being celebrated. So
that's so amazing. But you guys now venture into Hindi as well. The success of Sural. Tell me, does that pressurize you that now the success of Sural is also being carried with you here?
So when we started the show, it was supposed to be Amazon's first Tamil original, and they said they pitched it to us as cinematic television, which means that we will get that cinematic experience right in the home. So there was a certain scale and ambition of storytelling which they were completely open to, and that's why we jumped on board also. But we didn't know at that point of time it will release in so many languages, and Amazon will take it all across the world. But truth be said, finally, we are storytellers, and what is right for the story, we will do irrespective of how it is going to be marketed, where it's going to be released, and all that. And the hope is that so we strongly believe at any given point of time, any storyteller is this circle and the audience is another circle. There will be points of intersection. So if you're lucky, your point of intersection with what the audience wants to see might last a few years. But you have to know that at some point the circles are going to separate.
And I mean,
you have to keep evolving.
Every filmmaker, producer, they all make with the intent of reaching to a larger audience. So I mean, sometimes
and we've been there. Our first two films, which we worked just as passionately on as Vikram Veda or this or our Hindi film, it was received very well by a very small group of audience, while the larger group of audience went about that. But then our circle has just moved a little closer to what the audience want, and we know this is not a permanent space. At any point of time, what we are trying to say might have no traction, but you still got to do what you got to do.
What we can do our best.
That's so true.